So, Rick, what is your reaction to what's going on with Antonio Brown?
Well, some of this is what we just went through, a microcosm of what we just went through in terms of communication and the ability to connect and communicate. And that's where I am now. I was not surprised by the initial reaction by Antonio Brown. I was not surprised by the fact that he disclosed the conversations that he had with Bruce Arians or Alex Guerrero. But what was in those conversations has now led me to question the part that Bruce Arians and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers played in all of this, and not to lay everything at the feet of Antonio Brown. Yes, he reacted badly. There's no excuse for the way that he reacted. But I'm seeing this as a failure to communicate and a failure for people to understand where they were, because clearly this issue with Antonio Brown and his ankle and his readiness to play started well before the game or on the sideline. That's clear through what was disclosed in the text messages, particularly with Bruce Arians. And Bruce Arians clearly had questions about Antonio Brown's readiness and willingness to play. I look at the one text where he capitalizes, "We are not resting for the playoffs," which raises the thought that Antonio Brown was thinking, you know what, I might need to take this game off. And Arians' indication, I'm not ready for you to do that, or the medical staff. There's a lot of questions that are raised here. But these questions are not just about Antonio Brown at this point. There's a group here. In any decision, I mean, clearly he had an ankle injury. Going back and looking at the tape, clearly he was playing with an ankle injury. The kind of routes that he ran, how he reacted when he caught the ball. There was something very real going on physically with Antonio Brown. So while I'm not excusing the behavior, there is more to this story than we initially thought. And there's more to this story than the mental health of Antonio Brown. That's the one thing for me that goes out the window. This wasn't some psychotic break. This was, as we've seen before, Antonio Brown reacting to a disagreement with an authority figure. We saw him do the same thing with Mike Mayock. We'd seen him do it in Pittsburgh. And now we're seeing him do it with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We saw some of it in New England. So this is not a surprise as far as how Antonio Brown reacted, but in terms of what caused the reaction, I go from not surprised to now curious and wanting to know more. And all that Bruce Arians said still doesn't explain everything, because this clearly started before they were on the sidelines.
Oh, there's so much here. There's so much here. Let's start by saying there are no victims in this situation. This is some steaming hot NFL tea, and that's all there is to it. There are no victims here. There are three main characters in this story. Antonio Brown, who has zero credibility, which we'll go over in just a moment. Bruce Arians, who had credibility but then lost it when he kept Antonio Brown after Antonio Brown was suspended for a fake vaccination card. And Tom Brady, who took a risk in bringing in Antonio Brown last year, had him in his home. They won a Super Bowl, yes, but now have gone through another season with him. And how has it ended? The same way it always ends with Antonio Brown, which is why I am 0% surprised, and I have no sympathy for any of the main characters in this story. This was wildly predictable from Antonio Brown, wildly predictable. There's a lot of defenders out there, so maybe let's go over the list again of Antonio Brown incidents, shall we? Let's start with back in December of 2018, when he was deactivated for the Steelers. Remember when he used to play for the Steelers? Right? The Steelers' Week 17 game after reportedly throwing a ball at a teammate in practice. Let's fast forward to the Raiders. The Raiders, you remember when he had the frostbitten feet from cryotherapy? Remember all of this? And then he was released from the Raiders and posted this on Instagram. Do you remember that? There was the issue with the helmet. Then we can go to 2019, September, when he was accused of sexual assault, when he was released by the Patriots, when he was charged with felony burglary for the moving truck incident. Then he was suspended 8 games for the NFL's personal conduct policy. Then he was signed with the Buccaneers. Then he won a Super Bowl, and then he was suspended for 3 games for COVID protocols by turning in a fake vaccination card. I'm not going to read all of the incidents. There's obviously much more, plenty of things that I skipped over, some of which are listed here. So what exactly about this situation is supposed, from Antonio Brown's side of the story, is supposed to make me just stop in my tracks? Wait a minute. Maybe there was a reason why it was reasonable as a professional to strip half of your clothes off during the middle of a game, throw your belongings into the stands, and skip across the field while a football game is being played.
Hold on. I'm getting 2 bake around. Hold on.
We're all professionals here. We all get told things by our bosses we don't like. What we don't have is the ability to behave this way when when something is said to us. There are ways he could have handled this where I would have said, wait a minute, what did the Buccaneers do? Did they try to force him to play? One of those ways would have been to sit on the bench, not do this, and then afterwards give us an explanation for why he didn't go back in the game. And I don't know, maybe contact a representative from the NFLPA, because you can't force players to play whenever they're injured. There are ways to handle things that would give someone like Antonio Brown, who has no credibility, some space and pause for credibility. Bruce Arians, in this case, had every right for us to question what's going on with Bruce Arians, despite Bruce Arians' otherwise great reputation, because he went back on his word saying that there were going to be no more incidents with Antonio Brown, and yet he brought him back after he was suspended, which is fine. You're trying to win games, but don't act surprised when things blow up in your face the same way that they have everywhere that Antonio Brown has gone. And Tom Brady, no good deed goes unpunished. This was a move that he pushed for, which he's perfectly within his right as Tom Brady to do. But there is a gamble here, and the gamble paid off for a Super Bowl, but it did not this year. And now the Bucs are in the middle of a controversy going into the postseason. It is drama everywhere. There's stories on this side. There's stories on that side. There's a lawyer who, by the way, came out and couldn't tell us more strongly that Antonio Brown did not turn in a fake vaccination card. And I'm supposed to take him seriously in this situation. It's complete chaos, but this is everything that everyone signed up for from the beginning with this.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is part of AB's history, it's part of the story, and it's part of the risk-reward that teams undertake when you take on a player that's talented but has baggage. And so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rolled the dice last year on Antonio Brown, probably at Tom Brady's behest, to give them another dynamic playmaker. Now, it paid off for them because they won the Super Bowl. And ultimately, that's the goal of every organization. Now, they attempted to run it back, and anytime you run it back with troubled players, the odds increase that the real person is going to show up, which is Antonio Brown and the behavior that we saw. That said, both parties are responsible for the situation playing out the way that it played out. AB wanted his incentives. He wanted to play so he could get the money that was tied to the catches, receptions, and touchdowns that were in the contract. Bruce Arians suddenly needed AB to play because Chris Godwin isn't available, and Mike Evans was ailing with a hamstring. And so you had the Buccaneers kind of going back on what the values of their culture are to allow Antonio Brown to be a part of the team. And the reaction that you saw from Bruce Arians is a coach that realized that he made a deal with the devil. He made a deal to take on somebody who doesn't really fit the profile of the players that he wants on his team. He did that, and he watched it blow up in his face. So some of the blow up that we saw on the sideline was the realization of that. And so here we are a week before the postseason. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose someone who could have been a valuable contributor, but I actually think it's better for them to deal with it now and go into the postseason because it probably galvanizes the unit and gives them an opportunity to be at their best in the postseason, even though it's a very ugly incident.
Well, they also released Antonio Brown today, so he is no longer a Buck, but he does have a long track record of negativity. So, Rick, is his NFL career over?
Yeah, never say never. I mean, you would have thought that after Pittsburgh, then New England, you've gone through 2 storied franchises with 2 very good coaches. and yet he gets another opportunity. He gets it with the Raiders. And then we have all the incidents with the Raiders, and yet he gets one more shot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I will say that if he thought that everything that he did in the last 24, 48 hours was his path to getting another chance, that he's wrong. He's only made it more difficult on himself, because if I'm any team out there, I'm thinking whatever conversations I have with Antonio Brown, if they go a little bit sideways, I can almost count on the fact that he's going to publicize them, and he's going to publicize them in a way that is going to benefit him. He's not going to give the whole story, because we don't know the conversation when Bruce Arians says, "Call me." Did AB call him? See me in the morning. Did he show up for that conversation? What transpired? There's so much that we don't know. All we know is that this kind of trouble follows Antonio Brown. And at this point, you've had two teams now, the last two teams, that have ultimately paid a price, a very heavy price for betting on Antonio Brown. So I can't say that there's not some team out there, there's not some coach that's going to think, I can handle this. Now that I know what I know about Antonio Brown, I'm desperate for a wide receiver. Maybe we can make it work. It's incentive laden. All the things that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers told themselves to bring back Antonio Brown. There's the possibility that there's some team, GM, head coach that is willing to take that gamble. I doubt it, but I'm not going to say it's impossible.
No, I don't believe his career is over, because nothing up until this point has shown us that people aren't going to continue to take chances on him. I mean, he's obviously very talented, but time and time again, we've seen how it's ended, and time again, a team will line up to think that they're the ones that can handle the situation, and it is not going to go like that for me. We're a solid organization. We're the GOATs. We have a great culture, or we can handle it, and here we are again, having the exact same conversation once again. Now, for the rest of this year, why would I sign him? You're so hurt you couldn't go in the game, and so angry about being told about it that you took half of your clothes off and skipped across the field. So obviously there's nothing that you can bring to me at this point in the season. You're injured. You were too injured to go in, right? Isn't that the whole story? Isn't that the story with Guerrero? Isn't that what you're saying about Bruce Arians? Isn't that what you're accusing the training staff of, right? Am I missing something? Because I read everything, and from what it seems like, you're trying to tell us you were being forced, you were given a toxic shot to go in there and play. So I have no need for a player that is that injured at this point in the season. So I don't believe that someone would sign him now, not to mention the fact that you hung out the Super Bowl winning coach, hung him out to dry, and Tom Brady, who everyone in the league knows put his name and reputation on the line to bring you in. So it would be a little disrespectful, if not to Bruce Arians, to Tom Brady for someone to sign him. But he's injured. That's the whole point. That's why we're having this conversation about him right now, is because he is so injured. So no one's going to bring him in right now. That doesn't make any sense. But next year, I would not be surprised in the least if he is on a team, and we will be having the same conversation probably about this time next year, because that's how it goes.
No, I think it's done. It's a done deal. He violated the GOAT. Tom Brady was his biggest advocate, his biggest endorser. He won't get anybody who has as much clout or as power as Tom Brady. It's a done deal. He basically wrote his epitaph and obituary. It's done. And the way that it played out, the aftermath, the last 24 hours with the statement, taking shots at Tom Brady and the trainer and all that other stuff, it's over for Antonio Brown. I hope he enjoyed his 5 minutes of fame, but it's done. No one else will take a chance. No one else will subject their franchise to this kind of behavior. He has seen his last days in the National Football League. We will see if it impacts his status as a potential Hall of Fame candidate. But yeah, it's up in smoke.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. We have a lot more on Antonio Brown.